There's been a growing sentiment on the bookish internet for a while now. Books these days are just bad. But are the books bad? Or do you just have bad taste? Let's talk about it. My name is Joanna Kimber. I'm an indie author, asterisk on the indie. And let's talk about the state of publishing. I've heard the publishing industry be compared to fast fashion. I honestly think it's not as deep as everyone is making it seem. I don't think the publishing industry is specifically or particularly affected by this phenomenon. I actually think it has more to do with the internet making everything more accessible. So some of the things that you guys think are new with the publishing industry are actually not that new. It's just that they're new to you and it's public to you because of the internet. There's the argument that books back in the day were so much better than the books that are being published today. And I just want to remind everyone that books that are still relevant today from 50, 60, 100 years ago, they're still relevant for a reason. They're classics for a reason. 90% of the books that are popular this year, even the last 10 years, are not going to be relevant 20, 30 years in the future. I actually think it will be really interesting to be in my old age and see which popular books from my time are the kids reading in high school. You know, like not every author sets out to write the next great American novel or the next epic romance, you know? And this is where my first point actually comes in. Bad books get really good marketing. Publishers do not have a goal of producing the best novel. Their goal is to make money. And as we enter late stage capitalism and with the phenomenon of the internet, that makes it even easier and more of a goal for these publishers. And the authors behind these novels are in it for the same reason, to make money. These books tend to have the whole package on the outside, the beautiful cover, the perfectly written synopsis. They got another popular author to blurb it. Some popular internet magazine is going to feature it in an article. It's gonna be on the front table at your local Barnes and Noble, and best believe every big book talker or bookstagrammer or booktuber you know that does PR is going to receive a box with the book and the goodies, and they're gonna hold that book in front of the camera and they're gonna say, oh my gosh, this book has such a beautiful cover. They're gonna put it on their shelf, and then at the end of the year, it's going to be in their top 10 worst books of the year video, or their on haul video, or books I'm forcing myself to read because why do I have this book on my bookshelf if I haven't read it? Beautiful gowns. Beautiful gowns. Like, yes, girl, give us nothing. And there's actually nothing inherently wrong with these books. They're called popcorn novels. They are there purely for entertainment, and you're gonna see them everywhere. These are the books that are put on your book table at your local Costco or BJ's. If you know, you know. After a while of being in the book space, these books become very easy to spot. And if you genuinely pick up one of these books and expect it to be the next best thing that you've ever read, your next 5-star read, that says more about you than it does the actual book. I'm just saying, you don't watch the Fast and Furious franchise and then make a video talking about how bad movies are. Babe, you don't watch movies. When I see these videos coming across my timeline, when I go to these creators' pages, I notice a trend of oh, you're not really entrenched in the space like that, or you're only reading the most popular, most talked about, most viral books. There's another layer to that we'll get to, but let's take a pin in that because that brings me to point number 2. You're easily influenced. Books in general are not bad. you are just easily influenced. It doesn't take much more than a pretty cover and an interesting enough sounding synopsis and your favorite book talker, bookstagrammer, or booktuber holding the book in front of the camera and being like, wow, so pretty. All of a sudden you've bought the book just off of that. You're easily influenced. And so how can you blame the publishing industry as a whole? How can you say then that all thousands of books that are published in a year are bad? This is the only time I will entertain discussions about overconsumption within the publishing industry, because you can't overconsume books, guys. Buying books is not bad for the environment, which is the main reason why we say overconsumption is bad. You know, there's not an island of discarded books in the ocean. Books aren't washing up on the coast of Ghana, but that's a topic for another time. I will say though, if you are buying more than 5 books in a month and you're complaining that books are consistently bad, I need you to reevaluate your taste in books. I need you to reevaluate the process of actually purchasing books. Because I fear that some of us are just not being intentional about the books that we're reading. It takes a lot for me to actually decide to read a book. I think that's one of the benefits of not having a lot of money in my book budget, and also not having a lot of time to read because I'm in school and I also write. So I'm very picky about the books that I read, and I am a brutal DNFer. I give you 20% of the book if the writing is not decent, and if the writing is good, I'll give you up to 40%. But if it's not holding me, I'm DNFing it. I DNF'd a book this morning. I'm the type of person that will stand in the bookstore and read the first couple of chapters before I even put the book in my basket. Do I still end up with books that are, not my favorite? Yes. Yes. So I can only imagine not doing that and just blindly choosing the books that I'm reading. Of course, I'm going to think that all the books are bad. Of course, I'm going to end up with more poorly written books and more less than satisfactory books. And there's a difference between you not liking a book and a book being poorly written, a book being poor quality. And I think a lot of the complaints are that the books are poor quality. The writing is not good, character development is not there, storyline is not really that captivating, and the books really truly are beautiful gowns. Like, I get it, but if at the end of the day the beautiful gowns are enough to get you to purchase the book, then whose fault is that? Because you are buying the books. You are responsible for the books that you are choosing to read. Publishers follow what we spend money on. So if we are spending money on these beautiful gowns, they're going to continue to produce beautiful gowns and nothing else because they can get away with it. People say publishing is becoming fast fashion, but we have to also talk about the people who are consuming the fast fashion. The business wouldn't exist if it wasn't profitable. I can understand someone who is on a limited budget going to Shein or another one of these fast fashion companies and buying a bunch of stuff for like $8 a piece, $5 a piece, $10 a piece, right? With books, I don't get it. I also find that the bookish community will ride a trend into the dirty ground. You guys will read the same book over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I hate reading the same book over and over again. Honestly, it's one of my biggest insecurities as an author. Oh, speaking of beautiful covers, I have a cover reveal. My next book comes out on March 27th, and it's a literary romance that explores the intersection between desire and love. There's more about it on my Substack, on my Instagram. I'll put the links below. I'm very insecure as a writer about not being formulaic, because formulaic books, as we all see, sell. Trendy books sell. It would be very easy for me to write the same book over and over again, but what you find in my catalog is that no book is like the other. And I wonder sometimes if I'm shooting myself in the foot by doing that, but I cannot bring myself to write the same book over and over again. I cannot read the same book over and over again. You guys, however, love that. You guys will read the same book. When I say the same book, I mean you read a romantasy, for example, because this is what this whole discussion is surrounding, right? The romantasy genre. You will read a romantasy about a dark, brooding shadow wielder and a frail but somehow strong girl who is a chosen one, and they bump the hoochies, right? They bump the fronts and they ride dragons, right? And then another book comes out with the same premise, the same characters, the same tropes, damn near the same dragons, and you will eat it up again. And then another book comes out that's the same, and then you read it again, and you read it again and again and again and again and again. Where does it end? When will it stop? No, seriously. And then complain when publishers and authors continue to pump out the same book over and over again. It's making them money. Why else do you think it's happening? You don't have to read it. I have never read, I'm not a fantasy girl. Okay, I'm more of a sci-fi, surrealism kind of person. So I don't get the hype with the romantasy genre, and I never will. I will never read romantasy. Maybe the closest I would get is like a gothic novel. The publishers don't make the trends. We make the trends. So if you guys continue to entertain the same books with the same poor writing and the same black characters and the same lack of evolution, they're going to continue to put them out. Speaking of evolution, this brings me to my next point. Your taste in books is supposed to evolve the deeper you get into the hobby. The books that would have satisfied me years ago, if I was to pick one of them up now, it would probably bore me. I can look back and say at the time, that was it for me. At the time, I really enjoyed that. And I will have friends who are just getting into reading or ask for a recommendation, and I still will recommend those books even though they wouldn't satisfy me now, because your palette for books is supposed to deepen as well. Some of you, your taste in books has evolved, but you have not allowed your book buying habits to evolve with your tastes. You're supposed to say, this boy meets girl, girl meets boy romance novel, contemporary romance novel isn't really doing it for me anymore. Let me pick up something that is a little bit more complex. You're supposed to grow with your reading taste. You're not supposed to continue to read the books, the same kind of books that you were reading 2-3 years ago, and then just live in this dissatisfaction. Again, thousands of books published each year. They're not all bad. What does your book haul look like when it's not influenced by Goodreads or Book Talk or Bookstagram or BookTube? You're too invested in reading the popular book, in reading the book that has tens of thousands of reviews on Goodreads. You're robbing yourself of the joy and the wonder of great fiction because you're stuck in those ways. You're walking into a Wendy's and requesting a Wagyu filet. I've said this multiple times. I'll say it again. Traditional publishers are not the tastemakers of the industry. They haven't been for a long time. You guys are too scared to read indie. You guys are too scared to take chances on books that haven't blown up yet by authors you haven't heard of, by authors that don't look like you. Yes, we're going to go there. And I'm not just saying this because I'm an indie author, right? I'm saying this because as an indie author, I am free to write whatever I want to write. When you are an indie author, you can take risks and do whatever you want. You can write as absurd a story as you want. You can make the stakes high. You can make the stories interesting beyond marketability. In my opinion, there's a pressure on traditionally published authors to be as accessible as possible, as marketable as possible. Like when we talk about authors dumbing down books, I don't necessarily think it's the authors that are purposely trying to make their books sound understandable to the how do I say this without sounding super mean? I don't think authors are purposefully writing their books in a super stupid way. No. I don't think the typical author wants to handhold their reader or wants to write the book in a way that assumes the reader doesn't understand nuance or metaphor or context. You know, I do think there must be a nagging feeling in the back of your mind to make your books more accessible, more marketable when you are traditionally published, because you have your advance on the line. And even if you don't write it that way, what's stopping your publisher from saying, hey, I think we should edit this to make it more accessible because I don't think the average reader is going to get this. Why do they think that? Because the average reader a lot of times doesn't get things. I'm telling you this as a rising indie author. I don't like calling myself small. I'm rising, okay? I'm on my way. I have read some of my own reviews, not because I go looking. A part of the business of being indie is tracking how many reviews each of your books has. And of course, when you do that, you're going to stumble across a review or two. I have read reviews of mine where the reviewer is literally stating the opposite of what I clearly put in the book. And I mean, it's like I say in the book, the sky is blue. And the reviewer says, I can't believe the author didn't say the sky was blue. That is a level of lack of comprehension skills that we are dealing with. That is the level of literacy that we are dealing with nowadays. Okay. So yes, I do understand why publishers and editors might look at work that they're trying to make a lot of money from and saying, hey, maybe we should tone it down a notch. Maybe we should make it easier for people to understand, because a lot of people are just not getting it. But when you're an indie author, you can decide to take that risk. You can say, hey, I assume that most of my readers are intelligent enough to read between the lines and understand what's going on without me dumbing down my writing or holding their hand or spelling it out for them. However, I'm not being influenced by the pressure of a couple $1,000 advance. And I don't know if you've seen, but I've seen a couple of videos of readers going on and on and on, even sometimes calling to boycott an author because they have a problematic character in their book, or they depict something that is less than savory in their novel, in their story. Personally, as a reader, if your character is homophobic and that is actually a driving point of the plot, I would rather you show me them being homophobic than you telling me, oh, by the way, this character is homophobic. Do you see where I'm going with this? I imagine a lot of authors feel the need to lower the stakes, because I felt this too, but again, I'm able to look at myself and say, no, my readers are fantastic and intelligent and will get what I'm doing here. But I have 100% lowered stakes, taken things out because I don't want to offend people. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And looking back, I can see where some of my stories would have been more impactful if I had taken the risk. What's my point here? My point is that at the end of the day, it's on readers. Readers are in control of the market. What you buy is what the publishers and the booksellers are paying attention to. It's what we authors are paying attention to. I want to play this video that I came across when I was writing my script for this video.
I do not trust you little bitches on Book Talk and your stupid Kindle Unlimited book recommendations talking about this is 5 stars, this is one of the best books I've ever read. Meanwhile, when I was 12 years old, I was reading One Direction fan fiction written by someone whose first language was not English on Wattpad, and it was still better written than half of the shit I'm seeing pushed out on Book Talk. I'm gonna be the bitch and say it. Some of you need to go back to a high school level literature class because the lack of reading comprehension that I am seeing is scary. Talking about Guild or whatever the fuck it's called is a literary masterpiece. Almost as if when authors are using actual literary devices and, I don't know, nuance, not spelling things out for us like we're first graders, that I see a lot of the sentiment on social media being, it was too confusing and too convoluted. Critical thinking, babes. Learn how to do it. I love a little fun romantasy vibe as much as the next girl. Like, romantasy is one of my favorite genres. However, that does not mean that it has to be poorly written. And I'm just gonna say it, not everyone should have their book published. Sorry, I'm a bitch.
In the problem with Book Talk that nobody talks about video, I mentioned how Book Talk is so important for marginalized authors and readers to build community with each other. I don't want to put anything on this young lady, but she's clearly not a marginalized person. From what I can see, she's not a marginalized person, so it must be pretty easy for her to write off the fact that Kindle Unlimited is so beneficial for marginalized people because 95% of books that are traditionally published are written by white women. Kindle Unlimited is simply a service. It's not a pejorative. It's not an insult that our book is in Kindle Unlimited, and for some of us that is quite literally the only way for us to get our books out there, unless we're going to sit back and wait for some gatekeeper to let us in. Does it suck that Amazon has its foot on all of our necks and will not allow us to put our books anywhere else if it is in Kindle Unlimited? Yes, that does suck, but that is just the reality of the industry right now. And I actually have a video planned about why people will not stop buying books from Amazon. So make sure you subscribe so that you can watch that video when it comes out. Kindle Unlimited is not an insult. It's not a pejorative. If your book is in Kindle Unlimited, that doesn't necessarily mean that your book is bad. Kindle Unlimited is basically like a paid library service. Traditional publishers also put their books in Kindle Unlimited. I read The Song of Achilles last year through Kindle Unlimited. I do agree with her sentiment that not everything that you see being hyped up online in the bookish space is going to be good. The indie book space can sometimes feel like the Wild West because in the same space that you have like Shrek fanfic, you also have really amazing pieces of work. You have to put the effort in. If you are starting to feel this way, where you are consistently and constantly picking up books that you're just not enjoying and beyond enjoyment that you just don't think are well written, it's time for you to step back and diversify. Try some indie titles. You'll be shocked. Small presses are also doing the damn thing. Again, you'll be shocked. I also noticed that a lot of people who have this opinion do not read diversely. They don't read books that are not by white authors. Ooh, yes, I told you we're gonna go there. We're gonna go there. No shade to white authors. But I do think that because there is such a low chance of success for marginalized authors, that we put a lot more pride into what we're putting out, because you don't stumble across success as a marginalized author in this industry. You don't. Like, a lot of the complaints that I see from readers of contemporary romance genre, I just don't have those complaints for the Black contemporary romance genre. I think white authors are incentivized to write mediocre books because they're going to be chosen first anyways. So there's not too much writing on being successful. This is how we get a situation like Milo Winters, where 6,000, was it 6,000? 6,000 people pre-ordered a debut novel with no sample, just on vibes alone, when there are hundreds, if not thousands, of novels of the same ilk that are written way better by seasoned writers who have been trying to get their name out for months, years, and those same people would not give that author a chance because a person on the cover of that book does not look like them. To sum it all up, I do think bad books exist. I think bad books have always existed. I think because we live in a capitalistic society that we are going to have more art that is produced solely to earn a profit, solely to entertain. And I think it is the duty of the consumer to be mindful with what they are consuming. I'm saying this as much as a reader as I am a writer. You are responsible for the books that you choose to read. If you are consistently finding that the books you are reading are not good and they're at the same time usually traditionally published, super popular white authors, it's time for you to broaden your horizons. Diversify. It's good for your health. If you like this video, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more. Subscribing to my mailing list is the best way to keep in touch with me. I'll see you guys next time. Pick better books. Happy reading.